Okay, first and foremost, I would like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakak, Badash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect. Today I want to, just read over this article, that I found interesting. We're going to bring some scriptures out on it. All right, just jump right into it. It says, TSA lets millions use digital ID as Arkansas becomes latest to approve it, right? So it's really want to touch on, becoming digitalized, which is ultimately leading up to that mark. But they start with the, quote, small things, gradualism. They're slowly building up to it by, steadily implementing the little things. Right, so it says, airport passengers across the United States will now have an easier way to get through transportation security administration checkpoints. And it says an easier way, right? Because that's what they're putting it under the guise of convenience. This is easier, it's much simpler. All you got to do is this, and there's going to get more people to buy into it. It's kind of reminds me of the movie WALL-E, right? How over time, everything that they did was just for their convenience, right? To where they had all these electronics and stuff everywhere, and everyone is fat. Everyone is in a floating chair. They're not even on Earth anymore, right? They inhabited some space travel thing, right? But it's because everything that they were using and stuff, it was just for their convenience, to where they didn't even have to do anything. They say one word or push a button, and a robot or something would come to their helping. That's why they were all just fat and in floating chairs. They couldn't even walk anymore. But I continue reading. It says Arkansas this week became the latest state to allow passengers to use digital identification instead of a physical license or ID, according to Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration. Mobile IDs can also be shown in place of a boarding pass. The Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration is focused on streamlining and improving the services we provide Arkansans, said Jim Hudson, Department Secretary. U.S. mobile ID to board a flight will make travel easier for citizens. Once again, that easier, that convenience, right? We encourage Arkansans who have not obtained their mobile ID to take advantage of this innovative free tool, right? So now we're encouraging it, but sooner or later this is going to become the norm, to where it's the mandatory, where it's no more we encourage, is you have to get it. You won't be able to travel unless you get it. So far, more than 30,000 people in Arkansas have downloaded the mobile ID. Which states are using mobile ID? Mobile ID is available at airports in Arizona, California, Colorado, New York, Georgia, Hawaii, Louisiana, Iowa, New Mexico, Maryland, Ohio, Utah, Virginia, West Virginia, and Puerto Rico. While more states and territories are adopting mobile ID, the programs or applications used to store the IDs aren't uniform. For example, California allows passengers to store their digital IDs in the California DMV Wallet app, as well as Apple Wallet and Google Wallet, while New York only allows people to use the mobile ID app, according to the TSA. In May, the TSA began requiring passengers to have a real ID in order to board a domestic flight or enter certain federal facilities. Passengers without a real ID may still be able to fly, but must go through additional security steps, according to the TSA. Alright, so that's all. But yeah, they're pushing this, and we're gonna make it easier on you to travel, right? Right now this is just an option. You should do this. It'll be easier for you. But sooner or later, as times goes on, this is going to become the norm, and then mandatory, right? And this is really just pushing that digital, that everything digital age that they, that they want to bring, in order to bring out that chip, and have everyone, connected, everything and everyone connected, right, on like a blockchain. What I did, I went to chat and I searched up what are the uses of a blockchain, right, because they're trying to push a digital age. So the internet of things, everything is connected. They'll be able to pinpoint this from there and all over. So I said, what are the uses of a blockchain, right? Blockchain's main uses stem from its ability to store information in a secure, tamper-resistant, and decentralized way. Here's a breakdown of its key applications. Digital currency and payments. Cryptocurrencies, e.g. Bitcoin, Ethereum, use blockchain to enable peer-to-peer transactions without banks. Cross-border payments can be faster and cheaper because there is no central clearinghouse, right? And of course, number one is being a digital currency, and that was the whole thing with that act they just passed, the Genius Act. The CBDCs, or not the CBDC, but the stable coins, which is ultimately leading to the same goal. Digitalization, because if they digitalize the money, then they have complete control over it. So once they bring out the, things like that chip, which is what they ultimately want to implement, that CHIP, they'll be able to control how much money you get, be able to control when you get that money, be able to control when you have to spend it, and things like that. Says number 2, smart contracts, self-executing agreements that run automatically when preset conditions are met, used for automated insurance payouts, decentralized lending, or supply chain triggers. All right, and then notice how chat is pushing this decentralized, right? When they know damn well this is going to be a centralized thing. Supply chain tracking records every step of a product's journey, ensuring authenticity, e.g. tracking food, origin, preventing counterfeit goods. Identity and access management, right, is the main point that we want to get to dealing with the article. Can store digital IDs or credentials securely, giving people control over their personal data. And it says giving people control over their personal data, but really, those higher ups are going to be the ones in control. Useful in voting systems, health records, and online authentication. Record keeping and verification. Permanent verifiable logs for property ownership, land titles, and certifications. Prevents fraud by making records transparent and timestamped. Decentralized applications, apps that run on the blockchain rather than centralized servers, often used in finance, gaming, and social media. Tokenization of assets, converting real world assets, real estate, art, stocks into blockchain token that can be traded more easily. Secure data sharing, medical research, IoT devices, and business collaborations can share data with integrity guarantees. Voting systems, blockchains. Voting can make elections more secure and verifiable while preserving voter privacy. Intellectual property and royalties. Tracks ownership of creative works and automatically distributes payments to artists when their work is used. If you want. Alright, so yeah, that's pretty much it. But ultimately, everything being digitalized, on the same, blockchain or the same database, when they implement that CHIP, all of that's going to be connected to that CHIP. The CHIP will connect you to that grid, right? So they will be able to know all of this, be able to control all of that, know everything about you, essentially making you, a slave, because that's ultimately what they want to do. They want to have that control over everything. So this is 2nd Ezra, chapter 15, verse 17. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, right? And going back to, dealing with this article, how what that they're pushing this mobile ID, digital ID, right, as a option right now. But sooner or later, this would become the normal and the mandatory thing. And if you don't have a digital ID, then you're not going anywhere, buddy. You're not traveling. No, you're not taking this flight. Do you have your digital ID? Sorry, sir, we can't help you. But also, going into the main goal, the end goal, that CHIP, those who, don't decide to take that CHIP, they're going to become the outcast of society. Because once again, at first, they might say, okay, this is now an optional thing, right? But then it's going to become the norm, and then those who don't have it are going to be ostracized. So we have Revelation chapter 13. We start at verse 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that RFID, micro CHIP, the implant, and that no man might buy or sell save he that hath the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name, right? And once again, this is what I was, getting into. If you refuse this mark, you're going to be ostracized. You won't be able to buy, you won't be able to sell, you won't be able to gain the necessary things to survive unless you take that implant, unless you bow down. Here is wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. That's 666. Right, so again, those who refuse his mark, they're going to be the outcasts. They won't be able to live in the quote regular society because of them not having this mark. It's going to be like they're going to be the odd ones out, right? And ultimately, those, and there's going to be temptations. Like it says, you won't be able to buy or sell. So how are you going to eat, right? So that there is going to be things like that push people into getting, this implant, into receiving that mark, as well as, deceptions and so on and so forth. We'll go to chapter 3. Start at verse 7, right? And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. And this is speaking of what? Yahushai. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Right, and when the Lord opens the door, no man can shut it. If the Lord wants you to come into this truth, can't no man stop you. He says his sheep hear his word and they hearken, no matter what. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Right? And this can go two ways. This could be referring to the false prophets, the false teachers, who are going to when the things come to pass, they're going to acknowledge that there have been men of the Lord among them, the ones that they mocked against, the ones that they scoffed against. They're going to realize they've been telling the truth. 2nd Ezra chapter 16. Here, verse 73. He says, then shall they be known who are my chosen, right? And they shall be tried as to go to the fire. But then shall they be known who are my chosen, right? Because when things start happening, they're going to realize that this was a chosen man of the Lord. He's been telling the truth this whole time. When they see the Lord deliver a certain guy from a certain situation, and be thinking like, how Ain't no way he could have gotten out of that but through the Lord, Also, we can get Ezekiel chapter 2 verse 5. We can start at verse 1. A prophet's call. Ezekiel chapter 2 verse 1. And he said unto me, Son of man, stand upon thy feet, and I will speak unto thee. And the Spirit entered me when he spake unto me, and set me upon my feet, that I heard him that spake unto me. And he said unto me, Son of man, I send thee to the children of Israel, to a rebellious nation that hath rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me, even unto this very day. Right, because what does Acts 17 and 51 tell us? Let's grab that real quick. Right, ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, ye do always resist the Holy Spirit, as your fathers did, so do ye. So they've always resisted the Lord. They've always transgressed against him, even unto this very day, and even unto, this very day, current time and age. For they are impudent children and stiff-hearted. I do send thee unto them, and thou shalt say unto them, Thus saith the Lord power. And they, whether they will hear or whether they will forbear, for they are a rebellious house, yet shall know that there has been a prophet among them. Right, and going back to what we were reading in Revelation, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. They're going to know that a prophet has been among them. That the Lord was working with this man. Once certain things come to pass, they're going to realize, but that's when it's going to be too late. Just as, what happened when, Yahweh was persecuted. After the ground shook and stuff, and then they realized, they were like, oh, truly this was the Son of the Most High. It's going to be like that, but it's going to be too late then. But also, this could apply to who? Esau. It says, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, right? Which say they are Jews. Who do you have today over there in Jerusalem saying that they are the people of the Lord? Esau, the small hats. And are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee, right? And, scriptures say how we're going to be taking them captive, whose captives we were. We can grab that as well. Start at verse 1, Israel's time. For the Lord, Yahweh by Shem Yahushai, will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel. Right there off rip is letting you know who the Lord is dealing with. And set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. Right? And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Abishai. For servants and handmaids, they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in a day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve. So, that's a prophecy come to pass when the Lord places his people back in their land, the kingdom of heaven, which will take place on the earth. We're going back to the main, topic at hand. So it says, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Right? And ultimately, those who don't take this mark, those who don't bow down to the image, image of the beast, worship his name, are going to be the Lord's elect. Those he keep from the hour of temptation. In which the hour of temptation is, there's going to be multiple temptations, but the main one being, taking that mark. The Lord's going to have his chosen resist it, right? But why? Because thou hast kept the word of my patience. So because you've endured in this truth, believed in the Lord, and showed faith, showed works to couple that belief, he's going to keep you from the hour of temptation. So going back to chapter 13, right? It says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of the name. So if the Lord's going to keep you from the hour of temptation, keep you from receiving that mark, how are you going to, be taken care of? Well, obviously the simple answer is the Lord. He's going to take care of his people during those times. He's going to provide them with shelter, provide them with food, and provide them with protection. Here, Isaiah chapter 65. Verse 13. Therefore thus saith the Lord power, behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Behold, my servant shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, my servant shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. So the Lord's, servants, they're going to be taken care of. Back to the book of Revelations. Here in verse 15. Now it says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed, right? And ultimately that's going to be, coming for the Lord's people. They're going to be persecuted, for not bowing down to the beast. Let's get Luke chapter 21, start at verse 12. Here it says, but before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And ultimately those are, the Lord's chosen. You're going to have some that, well, they're all going to be persecuted, but you're going to have some who are taken up to the, higher up before these kings and rulers, for his name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what ye shall answer, for I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. Alright, so the Lord says, don't even for the brothers, who be, put in this position, he said, don't even think about what you're going to say. He's going to put the spirit on you, to rebuke rebuke the hell out of them, to where they won't even be able to, ain't nothing they can say to come back or, go against anything you just said. It says to gainsay nor resist. They just going to have to sit there and take it. The Lord, essentially, he's going to be speaking through you, rebuking the hell out of them. And if we go to Matthew chapter 10, here verse 20, here is speaking of the same thing. It says, but when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what you shall speak, for it shall be given you in the same hour what you shall speak. For it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. Right? So, through you, the Lord finna rebuking the shit out of them. And there won't be nothing they can say. Like, they just gonna have to sit there and take it. We're going back. Right? For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And ye shall be betrayed both by parents and brethren and kinfolks and friends, and some of you shall they cause to be put to death. Right? Because you're gonna have family come up against you. They're gonna be once Esau pretty much just stopped hiding his hand, coming after the Lord's men, ultimately, I mean, and women, of course, but mainly dealing with the Lord's men. You already see how they're trying to, push that label of terrorist. If you get what I'm trying to say. But yeah, they're gonna have things like, for example, let's say those who, preach that or teach that Esau is the so-called white man, right? They're committing a crime, right? So they might have it on the news or something, or wherever, and you might have family members. Oh, I have a calling up. Oh, I have a brother who so this and this, and then next thing you know, your door getting kicked down, and they come and snatch you up. No, but it says, some of you shall they cause to be put to death, right? But it's like, even then, you still got to maintain that faith. Just do what you've been doing this whole time. Believing in Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, even unto death. Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried. And ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. So be faithful unto death, and you're going to be given a crown of life. You're going to be resurrected, given a new body, given everlasting life, given dominion. Those who have to die for, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, they're going to be in a great position. Let's get 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Here, start at verse 13. Those who die in Yahushai. But I would not have you be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. Right, so he's not going to have you ignorant concerning those who pretty much are dead, those who died for him, that you sorrow not. So don't be pretty much weeping, sad and stuff for them, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Yahushai died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Yahushai will the Most High bring with him. For this we say unto you, so they're going to what? They're going to be brought back to life. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. And I want to get this in the NLT. It says, we tell you this discreetly from the Lord. We who are still living when the Lord returns will not meet him ahead of those who have died. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout and the voice of the archangel and with the trump of the Most High, and the dead in Yahushai shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So they're going to be the ones raised first and given the new bodies, and and be up in the chariots. And then those who the Lord has preserved through all the destruction and the death and the judgment, they're going to be beamed up to meet them before the missiles and stuff start rolling out. It says, then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. Right, and comfort one another with these words. So because hearing this, it puts you at an ease of mind, not worrying about dying, not worrying about those who do die, because if you died for the Lord, you're straight. And the brothers who have to go through that, or the sisters or whoever, they're straight. That's why you comfort one another with these words. And that's why in these days, the Lord's going to put the spirit on his men to not even fear, because we know, Lord willing, we be of that elect, but we know what's coming after. That's why what this truth is, it's liberty. The truth will set you free. That free of mind, of knowing what's gonna happen. Now I want to close out Revelation chapter 14, start at verse 9. Doom for worshippers of the beast. Right? Revelation chapter 14, verse 9. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Right, because you're going to have Yahweh Shai and his holy angels there. It says, and he shall be tormented with the fire and the brimstone, which is going into, when the Lord, and his angels and their chariots, they fire the lasers and stuff at America, right? As well as the nuclear missiles that are going to be in America. That this place is going to be completely developed in heat. And you have to imagine that the lasers and stuff from the Lord's chariots, they're probably 1,000,000 times harder than what a nuclear missile can cook up. So that's really going to be something. But it says, and the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. But as we read, those who have kept the word of the Lord's patience, he's going to keep them from that hour of temptation. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of the Most High and the faith of Yahweh Shai. And then once again it says, are they that keep the commandments of the Most High. You got people saying we don't have to, keep the law. Which, because they say that what Yahweh Shai came to do away with the law, that was the purpose of his sacrifice, which that's not true. He came to do away with the penalty of the law. We still keep the law. Romans 3 and 31. Let's grab that real quick. Here, do we then make void the law through faith? Most High forbid. Yeah, we establish the law. But we keep it to the best of our abilities, because we know that, you're not going to gain salvation through the law. It's by faith. But as we just read, do we then make void the law through faith? No. So here's the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of the Most High and the faith of Yahweh Shai. Right? And these saints are only going to be Israelites. Right? And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, right, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yes, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works do follow them. Right? So once again, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. They're going to be straight. It says that they may rest from their labors, right? Job chapter 3, verse 17. They're the wicked cease from troubling, and they're the weary be at rest. That they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them, right? Because the Lord. Let's grab it. Hebrews 6 and 10. We'll start at verse 9. But beloved, we are persuaded better things of you, and things that accompany salvation, though we thus speak. For the Most High is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love, which ye have shewed toward his name, and that ye have ministered to the saints and do minister. So, as we read, and their works do follow them, right? Because the Lord isn't unrighteous to forget, the works that you did for him, in his name. yeah, I want to leave off on that. So with that being said, once more, I would like to give our praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah Kodash. And Lord willing, this video was, edifying or informative in some way, shape, or form. Shalom to the hopeful elect.